Weak leaders crave applause because it hides their fear of insignificance. They mistake validation for power, and in doing so, hand their influence to the very people they wish to control. In this lesson, we'll expose the sickness of approval and learn how the strong isolate themselves from it before it rots their authority. A power does not wither from lack of followers. It withers from dependence on their praise. The court of the weak is filled with mirrors, each face reflecting what the ruler wants to see, not what he needs to understand. Such leaders live in the illusion of acceptance, but the moment applause fades, their empire collapses. The wise ruler, the Machiavellian mind, understands this approval is a leash disguised as affection. To master others, you must first sever your need to be liked. You must stand in isolation, calm, detached, and untouchable. Only then does power obey. A weak leader does not command, he pleads. Not with words, but with glances. With the subtle desperation of one who seeks confirmation that he still matters. Approval is his drug. Praise his oxygen. And like all addictions, it begins quietly until he cannot breathe without it. You have seen this disease before. In the manager who measures his worth by applause. In the influencer who cannot sleep until the crowd has spoken. In the ruler who listens not to reason, but to the loudest flattery. They call it charisma. I call it dependency dressed in confidence. For when a leader begins to need approval, he no longer leads, he performs. And every performance has an audience that demands more control. Ask yourself this, when a king begins to chase the cheers of his people, who truly holds the throne? In Florence, I once observed men who ruled with words sweeter than truth itself. They smiled at the crowd, promised mercy, and invited their subjects to speak freely. But power does not reside in kindness, it hides in perception. The people adored them, until they didn't. For the love of the crowd is as fickle as the wind, and when it changes, it does not whisper, it howls. The same mouths that crowned them with praise tore them down with laughter. And the men who had ruled by approval discovered too late that they had built their power on shifting sand. So I tell you, the need for validation is the enemy of command. Because those who can give you identity can also take it away. Psychology confirms what history has screamed for centuries. That validation triggers the same neural reward circuits as survival itself. The brain confuses approval with safety. It interprets applause as belonging and belonging as protection. But for a leader, this instinct is poison. For every compliment digested, another piece of independence dies. You begin to calibrate your behavior to please. You filter your truth to avoid disapproval. And one day, you are no longer a strategist. You are a mirror, reflecting what others want to see. The illusion of power replaces the substance of it. Let me offer a scene. Imagine a general before his army. He feels the tremor of doubt in their eyes. He has two choices, to seek reassurance or to project certainty. The weak general asks for loyalty. He tries to earn it. The strong general assumes it, commands it through composure and distance. The first ties his authority to their emotions. The second binds their emotions to his authority. Which one survives the war? Understand this truth. The hunger for validation is never satisfied. It is a bottomless well that devours ambition, reason, and courage. It transforms decisive men into performers, actors trapped in their own theater of approval. Those who cannot bear silence will forever dance for applause. But the silence you fear is precisely where power grows. It is in isolation that clarity sharpens, that confidence becomes steel. Your worth is no longer borrowed but forged. A true ruler measures himself not by praise, but by endurance. His ability to act without reassurance, to hold his line when the world demands surrender. You may think validation keeps you connected, but connection built on dependence is submission disguised as friendship. He who constantly seeks affirmation gives others the power to define him. So observe your own mind. When you speak, do you seek to persuade or to be accepted? When you lead, do you guide? Or do you crave approval that proves you still matter? This is the quiet slavery of the modern age, not the chains of iron, but the chains of opinion. History remembers those who detached from the applause, Julius Caesar did not wait for the Senate's blessing to cross the Rubicon. He acted, and the world rearranged itself around his decision. Was he loved? Not always. But fear, respect, and inevitability served him longer than affection ever could. The wise understand, to seek approval is to invite manipulation. To need nothing is to become ungovernable. And in that ungovernability, in that cold self-sufficiency, true command begins. So if you wish to lead, you must learn to disappoint, to reject the comfort of applause, to walk alone through silence without trembling, because power is not found in the echo of your name. It is found in your ability to stand when no one claps. The weak leader dies seeking approval. The strong leader kills the need for it, and only one of them is truly free. The most dangerous chains are invisible. They are woven not from iron or fear, but from affection. A ruler believes himself adored, yet it is his people who hold the leash. Approval. What a gentle word for such a brutal weapon. It flatters the ego while enslaving the will. And most leaders, blinded by the illusion of loyalty, never see who truly commands whom. Picture the throne room of ancient Rome. The emperor stands proud before the Senate, his robes heavy with gold. The crowd roars his name, banners rise, and the city trembles in reverence. He smiles, thinking himself divine. But that roar, that sweet intoxication, is his true master. For tomorrow, if the same voices turn to silence, his strength will crumble like marble in rain. The people do not love him, they feed him. And what one feeds, one controls. You may think power flows downward from the throne. It does not. In truth, it moves in circles, an endless exchange of perception and dependence. A leader believes he rules because he speaks, but in reality, he rules only as long as others listen. The crowd's approval is not a gift, it is a contract. A silent agreement, give us what we want, and we will give you the illusion of authority. Break it, and the applause dies. And so, to preserve their crowns, weak rulers begin to compromise. They shape their words to please. They hide their principles to maintain peace. They surrender truth in exchange for smiles. Each concession feels small, almost noble, until one day they wake up servants of the very people they sought to command. Look around you. The same theater plays on every stage. The politician who promises what the masses demand, not what they need. The executive who flatters his subordinates to avoid rebellion. The influencer who fears silence more than failure. They are all monarchs of mirrors, ruling reflections instead of reality. Why? Because they have confused influence with acceptance. They believe approval equals stability, when in fact, it guarantees obedience. To others, the crowd does not always wear faces. Sometimes it lives inside your own mind. Your fear of rejection, your craving for praise. It whispers, be agreeable, be admired. And each time you obey, you hand over a piece of your autonomy. Understand this, whoever can grant or withhold approval controls your behavior. It is psychological currency, and most men spend their lives begging for it. Those who master manipulation know this instinct well. They do not need armies or titles, they simply control access to validation. The manipulator praises you, then withholds it. You, desperate for the return of that warm glow, begin to perform. You adjust, you comply, you become predictable. And once predictable, you are controllable. Thus, the one who praises you owns you. History is littered with rulers who sold their freedom for applause. Consider Nero, who fancied himself an artist more than an emperor. He craved the stage, not the sword. When the people cheered, he believed himself eternal. When they mocked him, he burned the city that dared to forget his name. In seeking love, he lost control, and eventually, his life. Or think of modern leaders who craft their image not by strategy, but by sentiment. They watch polls, not principles. They govern through popularity until popularity turns. Then, stripped of favor, they are devoured by the same mouths that once sang their praise. There is a paradox at the heart of power. To be loved too much is to become powerless. For love binds you to expectations. It forces you to perform the role others wrote for you. But the ruler who stands apart, who keeps a measure of distance, commands not by affection but by necessity. People obey him not because they adore him, but because they depend on him. That is the truest form of influence. Not when others admire you, but when they cannot function without you. So ask yourself, quietly, who do you perform for? Who must approve before you move? Whose silence makes you uneasy? Every answer reveals where your strings are tied. To break them, you must learn to treat approval as information, not oxygen. You observe it, use it, even exploit it, but never need it. Once you no longer hunger for validation, you reclaim the ability to shape your own reflection. For when the crowd realizes they cannot sway you, they begin to respect you. And when respect replaces affection, power returns to its rightful hands. The king who feeds on applause becomes the slave of echoes. But the one who starves himself of it becomes the echo others chase. Every empire falls for one reason: the ruler begins to feel too much. Emotion, when ungoverned, becomes the traitor that opens the gates from within. You cannot command others if you cannot first command yourself. And yet, most leaders are prisoners of their own hearts, slaves to affection, anger, and fear disguised as compassion. They believe empathy is virtue. But in power, uncontrolled empathy is exposure. It reveals what wounds you. And once the world knows where you bleed, it will never stop pressing the blade. Emotional independence is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of it. It is the discipline of choosing when, how, and to whom emotion is shown. Imagine a king in council. His advisors bring chaos, arguments, doubts, and the cries of the people. If he shows irritation, he loses authority. If he shows pity, he loses fear. But if he remains unreadable, still as a statue carved from purpose, then his silence itself becomes power. The wise do not react, they decide when to appear moved. Emotion, to them, is not reaction, it is strategy. History remembers Alexander not merely for conquest, but for composure. In the heat of battle, he did not shout. He observed, calculated, his calm was contagious. Men who feared death followed him because his steadiness felt like fate itself. Contrast him with Darius, the Persian king he defeated, rich in emotion, poor in discipline. Darius sought loyalty through generosity, through displays of kindness and sentiment. But when fear struck, his soldiers saw it in his eyes, and their faith died before the first arrow flew. The strong rule through certainty, the weak through confession. In modern life, the same pattern repeats. Watch a leader who overshares, who confides every frustration, every doubt, every burst of anger. At first, it feels honest, human. But soon those around him begin to measure his moods like weather. They adapt not to his commands, but to his emotions. And thus, he is no longer leading, he is being managed. To the manipulator, this is paradise. They listen, they comfort, they collect your vulnerabilities like currency. And when the moment suits them, they spend it against you. Have you ever noticed how quickly sympathy turns into control? The one who comforts you today is often the one who steers you tomorrow. Psychology calls this emotional dependency. It is the invisible chain between approval and action. The human need to be understood before we feel safe, but a strategist must reverse this instinct. You do not seek emotional safety. You create it from within. The more independent your emotions, the harder you are to manipulate. You stop reacting to provocation. You stop explaining yourself, and that silence, the absence of emotional leakage, forces others into uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds respect, because nothing frightens the manipulator more than the man they cannot read. Understand, emotional control is not coldness. It is preparation. It is building a fortress not of stone, but of restraint. Inside that fortress, your decisions are not corrupted by sentiment or impulse. You can comfort others without being seduced by their emotions. You can punish without cruelty, reward without attachment. Those who call this heartless simply reveal that they have never held responsibility heavier than their own feelings. For the one who governs, emotion must serve reason, not overthrow it. Consider the chessboard. Each piece moves by logic, not passion. But imagine if the king could feel fear, or the queen could love her pawn. The entire game would collapse into chaos. Power operates the same way. Detach not to dehumanize, but to preserve clarity. Because when emotion rules, logic dies, and with it, control. Ask yourself, how often do you act to feel better instead of acting to win? How many choices have you made just to relieve guilt, to gain comfort, to please someone else's heart at the cost of your own advantage? Every time you do, you trade a piece of sovereignty for sentiment. You trade strategy for softness. And softness, when noticed, becomes leverage. A ruler must learn to appear compassionate while remaining untouched by the emotions he displays. This is not hypocrisy. It is precision. The lion must learn to smile like a lamb, but never forget he is a beast. Emotional independence is the first fortress of power because it cannot be stormed by words, guilt, or flattery. It stands silent while the world screams for reaction. And in that silence, others begin to reveal themselves. The unshakable mind wins long before the battlefield begins. So learn this art of detachment. Do not suppress emotion, command it. Let no one see which string moves your heart, or whether any exist at all. For when no one can provoke you, no one can control you, and when no one can control you, you become the calm center around which power itself must orbit. Power is rarely what it seems. It is not strength, not wealth, not even control. It is perception. And the greatest illusion of all is confidence without need. You see, most people mistake confidence for noise. They think it is loud, expressive, demanding attention. But true confidence does not chase recognition. It commands it by indifference. The moment you need to prove power, you reveal its absence. Imagine two men standing before a crowd. The first shouts his worth, demanding respect. The second says little, his calm unsettling the room. Everyone feels it, an invisible gravity. That silence is authority. Because what we cannot read, we cannot predict. And what we cannot predict, we fear and respect. Confidence is not built from certainty, it is built from detachment. It is the art of appearing unshaken, even when chaos surrounds you. In every court, there are actors who confuse attention for influence. They flatter, they boast. They perform loyalty to gain favor. But the ruler who observes them silently, who neither praises nor reacts, soon becomes their obsession. He does not seek their approval. He withholds his own. And in that withholding, he becomes the center of gravity. This is the secret few understand. Confidence is not something you project. It is something others feel deprived of. The moment they want your validation more than you want theirs, you possess them. History proves this truth again and again. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he did not declare his certainty to the Senate. He acted, calmly and decisively. That single gesture, unaccompanied by pleas or explanations, made the world tremble. Contrast him with Brutus, whose every move was justified by words, morality, and doubt. Caesar moved, Brutus explained. And history remembers only the man who acted without need. The same applies in modern halls of power. Observe the leader who over-defends his decisions. He exposes insecurity. The one who accepts criticism in silence, who answers only with results. He becomes untouchable. Because power, like fire, grows brighter when starved of oxygen. Silence is that starvation. Confidence, then, is not arrogance, it is control over reaction. It is the discipline to let others reveal their desperation while you remain composed. Most people are predictable in conflict. They rush to justify themselves, to prove superiority. They drown in explanation. But explanation is weakness disguised as reason. For every defense you make, you confess a need to be believed. A confident man does not persuade, he declares. He does not beg agreement, he assumes it. And when he speaks less, others imagine more. The imagination of the crowd completes his legend. Psychology calls this the confidence effect. Humans are drawn to those who appear self-contained. Why? Because independence signals survival. Those who seem unaffected by approval or rejection appear safe, leaders, protectors, forces of stability. It is not genuine invulnerability that fascinates people. It is the illusion of it. The calm face that hides turmoil creates mystery, and mystery breeds respect. You don't have to be certain to appear powerful. You only have to act as though doubt does not control you. Because once others sense you are at peace with uncertainty, they begin to follow you. Hoping some of that peace will shelter them too. Consider a negotiation. The one who shows eagerness to close the deal is already defeated. The one who can walk away without loss, he dominates. Detachment transforms every table into a throne. The same principle rules attraction, politics, and war. Neediness is repulsion. Indifference is magnetism. The less you seem to require from others, the more they will strive to offer. But here lies the paradox. To perform confidence convincingly, you must first conquer the hunger for validation within yourself. It cannot be faked for long, because the body betrays what the mind hides: hesitation in tone, tremor in breath, tension in gaze. True poise comes only when you are willing to lose, when rejection, loss, or insult no longer threaten your sense of self. You move with frightening freedom. You no longer perform for approval. You perform for strategy. Then every gesture becomes deliberate. Every silence a statement. Every glance a reminder of control. So when you next enter a room, do not rush to speak. Observe. Let others fill the air with their anxiety, their need to be noticed. And when you finally choose to speak, do so as if interruption would be sacrilege. Confidence is not the sound of your voice. It is the weight of your stillness. It is the art of being unaffected when others crave reaction. Those who master this illusion rule without threat, because nothing unnerves the crowd more than a man who needs nothing. And when you need nothing, you become the very thing everyone else seeks to impress. Every great ruler learns this truth. Power does not flourish in crowds. It grows in silence, in separation, in the disciplined solitude where clarity sharpens and illusions die. Isolation is not retreat. It is refinement. It is how a man extracts himself from the noise of dependency and becomes something others must orbit, not approach. But the weak call it loneliness. The strong know it as the crucible where authority is forged. You cannot command if you are always surrounded. Constant company is constant influence. Every opinion that touches you reshapes your thought, softens your will, corrodes your certainty. People do not realize how easily they are diluted by others. Their minds, once sovereign, become parliaments, ruled by the voices of friends, lovers, and followers. Tell me, how can you rule when every whisper in the room becomes a vote against your conviction? Isolation is not about rejecting the world. It is about rising above it. Consider the great rulers of history. Julius Caesar walked among his men, but never with them. His tent was his temple. Few entered, and none understood the calm that lived inside. He was present, yet distant, creating an aura that felt almost divine. Or take Napoleon. He often dined alone, not because he disliked company, but because he refused to become familiar. Familiarity breeds contempt, and contempt erodes authority. The moment others feel they know you, they begin to judge you, and judgment weakens fear. So the wise do not make themselves accessible, they make themselves necessary. Psychology explains this as the availability paradox. The more visible and reachable you are, the less valuable you seem. Scarcity amplifies importance. Distance intensifies desire. Think of it this way: a jewel loses its mystique when passed through too many hands. The same is true for presence. A leader constantly seen, constantly explaining, constantly reacting, ceases to be a symbol. He becomes furniture in the room of power. But a leader who withdraws, who appears rarely and speaks selectively, creates suspense. And suspense is power's most loyal servant. Isolation also grants something few understand: inner silence. The crowd thrives on reaction. The leader thrives on reflection. In solitude, the mind is no longer a battlefield of external voices. It becomes a weapon aimed with precision. Those who fear solitude reveal their dependence on distraction. They are terrified of confronting their own thoughts, because thought exposes weakness. But those who endure it discover something terrifyingly useful: clarity. Clarity is control, and control is dominance. Observe the manipulator. He depends on proximity. He must be near you to twist your emotions, to infect you with doubt. Distance starves him. Your absence becomes your armor. Even in modern politics or leadership, isolation remains a strategic weapon. When a powerful figure disappears briefly from public view, the world speculates. Mystery grows, and with mystery comes narrative. And when they return, measured, composed, untouched, They appear stronger, because the human mind fears what it cannot access. But isolation requires discipline. If used without purpose, it turns to arrogance or madness. If used with intent, it becomes magnetism itself. There is a fine art in how you distance yourself. Withdraw physically, but remain mentally present. Stay silent, but observant. Engage selectively, but decisively. Isolation must not cut you off from influence. It must concentrate it. To isolate effectively, you must first master yourself. For solitude exposes what distraction hides. It confronts you with your own ambitions, insecurities, and motives. Only those who survive this confrontation can command others without trembling. The crowd mistakes accessibility for strength. But every wise ruler understands the opposite is true. To remain constantly reachable is to surrender your authority to interruption. When you isolate yourself, you force others to seek you. They wait for your word, your appearance, your approval. And in that waiting, they yield control. This is the invisible inversion of power. They think you need them. But through distance, you make them need you more. Look closely at your own life. Who demands your presence the most? Who drains your focus with constant access? Every one of them dilutes your influence. Withdraw strategically. Make your time a currency too costly to waste. And watch how quickly respect replaces familiarity. Because people cannot revere what they overconsume. Solitude, then, is not weakness. It is a throne built in silence, guarded by distance, and ruled by discipline. It is the only place where the mind becomes its own sovereign. The crowd obeys noise, but power obeys silence. Learn to vanish, not to hide, but to heighten your presence. When you step back, the world leans forward. And when you return, you do not enter the room as one among them. You enter as something beyond them. Power is not taken, it is offered, by those who never realize they are giving it. Control is never about chains or commands. It is about understanding desire, and letting others walk willingly into your design. The weak reveal their motives. The strong conceal theirs until obedience feels like free will. You do not dominate by force. You dominate by direction, by guiding the emotions of others while appearing untouched by your own. The art of control lies in silence, distance, and perception. Once you master these, you will no longer need to persuade. People will volunteer to follow. So reflect on this. Are you shaping the game, or being shaped by it? Are you the ruler of perception, or its prisoner? If you seek to rule unseen, to wield influence with the precision of a blade, then stay. Comment your thoughts below, subscribe for more Machiavellian insights, and share this with those who still believe power is kindness. Let them learn how control truly works. Quietly, invisibly, inevitably.